We have to do everything that we possibly can in normal circumstances to be the ones that honor the parents and to be the ones that love our parents, because far too many people will will put themselves on equal footing when it comes to a disagreement, when it comes to some sort of fallout, and they will escalate with their parents and, quickly resort to, a different framework or a different way of thinking that leads them to not treat their parents right. And so I think there's value in what Habib said. And, I talk about my mother, may Allah have mercy on her, all the time, right? I think there is value in us talking about the ayat of the Quran and the ahadith of the Prophet ﷺ and the sayings of the Salaf, the sayings of the pious predecessors. Now, what does this not include? There's the famous saying of Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu ta'ala anhu, and by the way, I don't know of any sanad, any actual chain that would make this binding, but it is a quoted story in many of the books of tarbiyah that a man came to Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu ta'ala anhu to complain about his son, and his son said, does the child have rights upon the father? And Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu ta'ala anhu said yes. And he said, what are those rights? He said that he chooses a good mother for him, that he teaches him the Quran, that he gives him a good name, or that he gives him a good name and teaches him the Quran. And the father had failed to do all three of those things. And Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu responded and said, عَقَقْتَهُ قَبْلَ أَنْ يَعُقَّكَ, that you have failed him, or far before he failed you, that before he disobeyed you, you did not do right by him. So that's there, right? Those types of things are there, that certainly the children have rights upon the parents. The children have rights upon the parents. And by the way, the more that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives a person of responsibility, of amana, of degree over a person, the more egregious abuse becomes of that position of trust. And that's why when it comes to leadership, right, who is more despised in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala than an oppressor, than a tyrant, right? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives you subjects, Allah gives you people, and you have a responsibility towards those whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has assigned you extra rights. So that's there in the Sharia. That's a built-in mechanism. So when it comes to parents and their children, at no point do you put yourself in an unsafe situation. So let's start there. That abuse is not acceptable, right? Abuse is not acceptable, especially abuse in which there's no question about it being abuse. Abuse is never acceptable. And if a person is abused by their parents, then they should take themselves out of that situation, and they should seek help, and they should not feel guilty for doing so. Now, it becomes trickier when it comes into the realm of, what's sort of, an infraction that is part of everyday relationship, where people are going to overstep, where people are going to say things sometimes, where people are going to do things sometimes, and a repeated pattern of abuse. And when it comes to that level, what I will say is this, is that seeking an intervention from an aunt or an uncle or from someone else is not disobeying or dishonoring the parents. So he said leaving a situation of abuse is certainly not dishonoring them, right? If anything, the sin is then greater on them. But the second layer of that, which is to seek intervention, is not disobeying the parents. If it's less than that, right, where it doesn't require an intervention yet, but to express yourself and to say, look, mom, dad, I want to talk to you. And look, when you use these words, it hurts. I'm dealing with certain situations here. I'm going through something, or these particular words sting, or I feel like this is... then, that's not disobeying the parents. That's not dishonoring them, right? What becomes harmful, or when it falls in the sinful, is when a person becomes abusive to their parents, right? When a person becomes, violent towards their parents, or starts to say things towards their parents, or do things towards their parents, right? So seeking mechanisms by which you can better your relationship once it comes under, away from abuse, in which you have full rights to disconnect yourself from that situation. You should not feel guilty if you have left that situation. Especially when you have an objective person to tell you that indeed, this is a situation that you should get out of and that you should not be in. But we're talking about that second level, which is when you're trying to have conversations with your parents, where you're trying to balance the honor to them while also articulating some of the hurt that comes through some of their words and some of their actions or whatever it may be. That's not disobeying them or dishonoring them. At no point should a person become volatile to where they're screaming, to where they're yelling at their parents, to where they're becoming abusive towards their parents and those types of things, right? That's not the character of the believer, certainly not to your parents, okay? Now, after all that is said and done, every single person has their unique circumstances. Every single people has their specific circumstances. You have a Lord who is most merciful, who is most just, to seek help, to seek guidance from someone to help you navigate turbulent times. None of that is contrary to the tawakkul in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to the trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And, I want to end with one particular thing, which is a story from the companions of the Prophet ﷺ that I think is extremely powerful, which is that, imagine being Ikrama ibn Abi Jahl. Ikrama radiyallahu anhu was one of those who fought against the Prophet ﷺ in Uhud, and in fact was one of those responsible, along with Khalid radiyallahu ta'ala anhu and Amr radiyallahu anhu at the time. They weren't Muslims, for hurting the Muslims the way that they did in Uhud. And the Prophet ﷺ, told the Muslims not to speak ill of Abu Jahl, or okay, we can speak ill of Abu Jahl, of course, but not to harm Ikrama by reminding him of Abu Jahl, reminding him that his father was the pharaoh of the ummah, because Ikrama had natural feelings, obviously, and that could be a form of belittling him and hurting him. So not to use the name of Abu Jahl around Ikrama in a way that would hurt Ikrama radiallahu ta'ala anhu. And I think there's something very beautiful about that, which is, look, Allah Azza wa Jal knows we're human beings at the end of the day. At the end of the day, our heart pulls in certain directions. And for some people that wanted to have a good relationship with their parents, but there was an abnormal situation where the parents shut the door, you're not to be faulted for that. And you have a Lord that's merciful and understanding and just. But we start off with, just like with everything else, saying that, Ya Allah, I did my absolute best. As long as you can say, Ya Allah, I did my absolute best, and you did shura with righteous people, with scholars, with people that could help diagnose the situation, I did my best, then inshallah ta'ala, your intention is sound, and you're not to be blamed for any of that hurt that then came your way. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala cure our broken hearts. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala cure our broken relationships where there's still a chance for them to be cured. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to do best, allow us to show ihsan to everyone that He has assigned ihsan to in our lives, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us recipients of that ihsan. Allahumma ameen. If this still does not help, I apologize. I certainly understand. Again, these are messages, general messages that are meant to help us sort of navigate within a framework, but at the same time, I understand that there are going to be people with specific situations. May Allah help us all, and may Allah help you all to get through whatever it is that you're getting through. And I should say again, right now everyone is struggling with something. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help all of you through whatever hardship you may be struggling with, and may Allah Azza wa Jalla enable us to help others as well. Jazakumullahu khairan.